Sometimes characters just die. Now, what do I mean when I say this? I'm working on a book right now, the second book in a cyberpunk trilogy. Link in this description below to my first book, The Glass God, on Amazon. But what do I mean when sometimes characters just die? In the writing process, when you're writing a book, and you might be noticing this yourself if you're writing a book yourself, but when writing a book, sometimes, and we outline the story and we know where the characters are going, or at least, some of us do. Um, Sometimes where a story goes, you might not originally have planned for a particular character to die, but then it actually gets to a point where it turns out that's actually the most logical thing to have happen, which is kind of weird when you think about it. It's weird to consider that for a character to die is a logical thing to happen, more logical than if a character lives. Um, when I was working on the earlier drafts of my first book, there was a character where in the rough draft he doesn't die, but in the second draft he does, and it just makes so much more sense for that character to die than it doesn't. But then there was a character who was always meant to die, from the rough, even from the rough draft. But in later drafts, I was actually trying to figure out how I can make the character survive. And I even asked people, like, can I allow this character to live? Like, can I, can I actually find a way for this character to survive this book? Because I was that attached to that character. I was really wondering if there was a way that the character can live on. And everyone who had read the book and was giving me feedback told me that it actually didn't really make sense for the character to keep living, that it didn't really make sense, that this character's arc was pretty much done. There was nothing more that this character could really do. Like there was nothing left. And by keeping him alive would just be like kind of more detrimental than it would be beneficial, especially when it came to the point in the story. So, like, yeah, sometimes characters do just die and sometimes you don't want them to, but it makes more sense for them to than it doesn't. You still want to make sure that when you handle scenes like that, um, those characters kind of get the justice that they deserve, or, justice, that it's handled well, that it's written well, that it makes sense, that it's not shock value, it feels integral to the plot. You want to still make sure of those things. Yeah, but sometimes, weirdly, especially in those, like, in those epics, characters end up dying, and there's not really anything that you can do to save them. And if you do, it would probably feel forced, and if you don't have any other plans for those characters afterwards, then it just kind of feels pointless, and those characters are taking up time that could be spent with other characters that were meant to keep living. So yeah, kind of a short, funny, maybe even shock value-ish, video for you all. If you're writing a novel yourself and you're kind of debating whether or not a character should, be able to survive. Maybe in the outline, the character, is meant to die. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe it's meant to be that way. But yeah, like I find it interesting. There were a lot of instances and stuff that I've written in the past that never saw the light of day in terms of publication. There were characters that I really wanted to see survive, but it only made so much more sense for the character to die. So, yeah. Interesting stuff also, like, I think it's hilarious how nonchalantly we talk about, characters dying in our stories, how nonchalant that is. Death is such a heavy topic, but when it comes to the subject of characters dying in a work of fiction, we're very nonchalant about that. We don't think too much about it. We don't invest too much like mental energy in it. We just kind of let it happen, and I think that's so interesting. How, I mean, yeah, like, we are invested in our characters. We care about what happens to them, but ultimately, like, but we don't have nearly as much of a connection with with our own characters who die than we do with for people in real life who die. Like, in real life, death is a really heavy topic, and there's a whole process of grief and everything when we experience it. Um, but when it comes to characters dying, eh, I mean, it's pretty easy to get over. Like it's not something we think about, and it's not very heavy. Yeah, just kind of a random thought for you guys tonight. If you like watching my random thoughts and my little and hearing my tips and advice for you, if you're writing your own book, I do this almost every night, Forest After Dark. You can like this video and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow night.